I'm going to show the discoveries I've made in the Shervo cave, a 36,000-year-old site of cave art that has manufactured parts of the cave, artifacts, maps, coastlines, geoglyphs that can only be seen from the sky and were discovered by Steve Meads. And I have discovered more that pertain to Australia. So we will look at all of the Australian connection in this presentation, and in the future I will show more presentations of things that I found in this cave. Very interesting stuff. Archaeology.culture.fr has pan-tilt zoom cameras that you can actually look around these 10 chambers now. That is how I discovered some of this stuff, but also a lot of the images just come from the internet or from library book. One of them is named The Dawn of Art, which is how old this art is. It's considered to be the first art of quality, but it's much more advanced than what we're being told. In the end chamber, I found this. It has Australia's existing coastline and previous coastline. During the last ice age, before the seas rose, the shallow sea between New Guinea and Australia was exposed. That is called the Sahul plate, and it looks like this. Feet making a inland sea of the Gulf of Carpentaria, tail, horns. And on the cave wall, these islands and this ring has been shown inside the bison as it grows and moves forward out of Australia towards the Sunda plate, as this was called, which is the joining of all the Indonesian large islands to Malaysia and the mainland. So basically, by crossing this stretch of water called the Wallace Line, one could reach from Australia to mainland Asia, Europe, and Africa. We're going to see the rest of the end chamber map in a moment, but this is the beginning of the journey. In the North Brunel chamber, I found this. It has not fallen from the ceiling. It is not part of the floor. It is placed. It's a in-depth representation of Australia, including lakes and waterholes, rivers, geographic features. It has relief, which is why I've shown you the relief map down the bottom. You can start to check the basins and the high country. It has continental shelf. But when we look at it from a macro level, I can see a man's head with a wide open mouth and an elongated chin. There are animals in here, including Australian animals. The first thing I see is a fish, then a dolphin with a blowhole coming back through, and a tail. There is a platypus with arms and a bill, and there is also a hippopotamus here with his tongue sticking out. There are some other animals up here. We'll have a look in a minute. This is the end chamber, which is the most famous part of the cave. It has the womb area, and I noticed that it does not look natural, it looks man-made. When I heard from Steve Mead's talk that there were Egyptian rivers through here, that made me go back to this area and look and find all of these countries. When I got to the end of Southeast Asia and looked towards where Australia should be, I couldn't find it. So I looked across, and finally it was there. Looking at this scene from the macro level again, stepping back, we can see a wide opened mouth and an elongated chin on this guy who's actually looking at Australia. His head seems to have lifted right off of this hole, and that is appropriate because it's the Tibetan Plateau, or the roof of the world. The area that it came from, this hole, has these little spiky bits, and it is a perfect match for Lake Toba, which has those little spikes, fingers reaching out towards the island of the lake. It's a caldera of a supervolcano that exploded 75,000 years ago in the largest explosion there's ever been on Earth, which created terrible conditions in the northern hemisphere for life, and is postulated to be a evolutionary event for modern humans. This guy is actually lying down, and here is a hip joint, and this area of the cave has a crease, which is the hip. You can zoom in and check that out yourself. You'll also notice in here male genitals. You have to look, but once you see them, they're very clear. So everything is there, all the countries all the way across. The map of the journey from Australia to Shervo. So I wanted to see how well they represented Australia, how accurate. Not an easy shape to freehand draw, but when I measured the longest vertical that I could put on the map on the wall, scaled a standard atlas map to it, and put in the horizontals, I just copied and pasted these this cross onto 3 other versions of the same thing. Mix and match these Australias together. They work in every single way. So it's almost a perfect match there. Catherine Gorge is represented. Marble Bar, a geologic formation which can only be seen from the sky, I would think, and especially so with this L-shaped chevron. There's a little curve just below it as well that are both present on the Google Earth. Here in the Northern Territory, Cape Arnhem shows us Cape Wessel. It's that little prong. Below it is a little mouth, which I believe they have shown. And coming further south, it's there. And it even looks like it's there. So 3 connections. Here are coastlines that were exposed between 100 and 11,000 years ago. They cycled in and out between these, this article says. There's 3 different levels, but they all match. So the first and best one was the lion up here, matching, and directly below it, it's really interesting what happened in the cave. They often are using depth and space to connect and bring things together. They love to make things 3-dimensional, and actually we see, as because there's contours all around the place, we see things kind of disappearing and then moving and bending as you look around the cave. So unfortunately, we can't go in there, but basically here what we've got is something that's been built in the background here. It's not part of the main foreground rock. But this spike, it comes in later too, but it seems to be this, and this area here seems to be this. Then unfortunately they cut this image off. They didn't, but we know it's going to do those things. And notice here, spiky elongated chin. On the east side of the country is the Great Barrier Reef. So this one over here is right above the worm. It's the 3rd representation of Australia that there is. It has, I put it in here because it has the reef shown. But this one is actually mostly about this central area, and that is Mootit Julu waterhole on Ayers Rock, or Uluru. We'll have a look at that soon. Coming from the bottom of South Australia is Spencer's Gulf here, which continues on to mountain ranges in the shape of this X. So they all exist, and this inverted V also exists, going on into Western Australia. Just to the northeast of the centre of the cross is Wilpena Pound, a very impressive feature that is called Ikara, gathering place or meeting place in the local language. I put an arrow to measure from Port Augusta to Wilpena Pound, and I compared the distance from Wilpena Pound to Lake Eyre, and I found 2.5 times. Then I grabbed the numbers off Google, and it turned out to be exactly 2.5 times. So they've done that in correct ratio perspective. Over here, I noticed this white, and I believe that this is a good visual of a river mouth with even sandbars in here in the shape of an outflowing river mouth from the mighty Murray, which is the biggest river in Australia. Just to the right of the centre of the cross, which is Port Augusta. I noticed a complex lot of squiggles, so I zoomed in, and I think a pretty good representation of Mount Remarkable National Park it is. It's got a round shape in the center of this circle is some little creeks across, so I believe that's what the cross is. There is these ranges, angular shaped, so all in all a pretty good match. The hippopotamus with its tongue sticking out is a part of the Australian coastline right near Darwin. Here we can see Melville Island again, the Tiwi Islands, triangular seas across from each other with a small island in between, like that. 1, 2, this one with a straight line really looks like it's been made straight. They drew a straight line there. And right above the hippopotamus is bison horns. And the whole thing turns up in Egypt later on as the hippopotamus goddess with bull's horns. Looking closely at the platypus bill, we get a pretty good comparison to a real platypus bill, and also we can notice that a hippopotamus nose is a good match for a platypus bill. So this explains why this substitution's taken place between Australia and France, which is so close to North Africa. When scientists discovered that a couple of small mammals have fluorescing fur under a UV light, they had a look at some marsupials and they found that there is only one, and it's the platypus. A blue-green glow. In Crete, the Minoans were a mysterious seafaring people. They had aquatic-based art. They also did a lot of bulls. These are the frescoes from the palace. Dolphins were everywhere on their art, always with this peculiar nose, which looks like a bill. So what are the chances? The platypus's bill ended up in the Minoan art via Shervo cave from this piece. There's kangaroos in here. A big one. This one with the square eye comes through like this. That is its tail if it's moving very fast. There's also a smaller kangaroo in here. That curved tail could be coming around for either of them if they were taking a rest. But down here, got a close-up of the front paws, which are really very well done. Very accurate looking shoulder and front paws of a big red kangaroo. Australian animals in Shervo Cave. Below the Gulf of Carpentaria is Barkly Tableland, and it has this very important lake called the Sylvester Lake System. In a flood event, it fills up and gets big. Rivers slowly flow down and over weeks. Other rivers from Queensland flow into Lake Eyre, and the Georgina River comes from, Lake Sylvester down into Lake Eyre, and I've traced that on the map. They've got that drawn in. And Lake Eyre will flood out into a huge lake, and Australia will turn green and all the birds will come in. It'll be a great time. This feature is very accurately made out in 3 dimensions on Google Earth. We got it there. We have a ramp feature that comes down and flows into Lake Sylvester. So that is in the right place. We'll have a look at the front of the feature in the next slide, but right beside Lake Sylvester is shown 2 little holes, and when we look on Google Maps, in the perfect spot are 2 little water holes with water in them. Oh, good. And in front of the feature, Tarrable Lake and Cresswell Creek. As we can see, this creek, these little parts are not really going anywhere. They would seem to just be the drop-offs from the escarpment here. So that doesn't flow anywhere. It just sits unless it fills up and then starts to flow into all these areas. It inundates and then starts to flow towards the Georgina River. So it's very accurately shown the way it all works. In the end chamber, Australia is in this area. But the first thing to notice is there is like the urethra and a vaginal opening. But this is the eye of an elephant, which is looking to the right, a large elephant with a trunk and an ear. And the same eye is part of an elephant that's looking straight at us with a tusk and a trunk. And then there's a little elephant. So 3 elephants in there. Their trunks follow along. They're built under the floor. And they come all the way to Australia, and then it joins on over in Victoria. Then when we look above there, we can see the coastline of Australia mapped out. Everything matches up. It's bull's horns, a drop and another drop, Melville Island again, a rise, drop, level, drop. Just goes the same. Here we've got 2 round feet and Nullarbor Plain. Here we've got the Murray dividing into the Darling and the Murray. Here we've got the basic shape of the Gulf. Here we've got this scratch across. So Tasmania is being shown for the first time, and that explains why this circle's sitting there, because when you put the coastline straight across, it gives you Port Phillip Bay, which is this large circular bay with a very small entrance. So this has been made into a leg That's the left leg, the buttock, anus, genitals of someone who's had their leg chopped off. And this image below is what you see when you walk around here into the Mutit Julu waterhole. This shape is the shape, and the waterhole is a really beautiful place, always full, always has water in it, frogs, breeze blowing through it. It's always green around Ayers Rock, apparently evaporating 12 times as much water as actually falls on it, which is 12 inches a year. And then right in, and we can see as you're walking in the car park, walking in, you see the leg chopped off, the backside, and right nearby is another feature of this what looks like a whole limb chopped off of the of a rock formation. This is the sacred place. It is on the wall in a secret way and found by Steve Meads, this actual image. We have found it again and placed it in Australia. So in a future episode, I will look more into this place and also the way it is utilised and demonstrated in the cave. I hope you have enjoyed seeing this information come out. Follow along on Facebook or YouTube. Thank you very much.